All right, hello there. Welcome to tonight's live stream. This is going to be a pretty quick one, pretty short one. This is going to be me. We're just doing tonight coverage of the upcoming Charlotte local elections. These are pretty limited in scope. These only apply to Charlotte and a couple other cities in North Carolina. But these are a little bit interesting, in my opinion, because they involve a Biden plus the district Biden won with 61% of the vote. This is the 6th city council district in Charlotte. All of the city council districts in Charlotte are up tonight, including all the at-large seats. Republicans are really hoping to hold on to the district here. The current person running is Tarek Bakari. He was first elected in 2017. The other Republican on the council in District 7, Ed Druggs, is unopposed. He is not running with any opposition. So his district does not matter tonight. He's going to win regardless. But it's the Tarek Bakari seat, the 6th, that is the really interesting one here for Republicans. So we're going to go ahead and look at the results here. These should be results. Polls have closed at 7:30, so these should already be coming in very shortly here. It won't be too long. North Carolina typically does a very good job of reporting the results quickly. So we should be able to see what's happened here and some of the early voting in particular pretty soon, because the early votes in North Carolina are dropped first. Like a lot of people have asked for in other states. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and open up here, share the screen. DDHU is not covering this election, so I'll be using the State Board of Elections from North Carolina. Let's see over here. Yep, give me 1 second here. I'm controlling my screen share here. All right, let's get this display up. Yeah, so basically the long and short of it is these districts in Charlotte were originally drawn. Republicans have controlled the 6th and the 7th for basically as long as possible. These are the wedge districts in the city of Charlotte. So these are South Charlotte. These are places that have originally voted for Republicans by very large margins, but have since shifted to voting for Democrats in more recent elections. So in particular, these districts voted for Biden by double digits. Republicans still have pretty good strength down ballot. Dale Folwell, even the new set 14th district, Dale Folwell, who's the treasurer, almost won the district. He only lost it by 6%. So even these districts are, as they exist right now, are not entirely lost for Republicans in general. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the early votes here. So the districts that saw the highest turnout in North Carolina, as you expect, would be the 6th and the 7th. These are the two Republican districts. In particular, the 7th district probably saw the most coverage here. Sorry, I'm having difficulty getting my option to work here. But yeah, so right now, as it is right now, with the early votes in, this is about 4% of the vote total. Vilaus, as expected, is leading the mayoral race, about 73% of the vote. This is down from last time. She finished about 77% of the vote. And then the council at large races, Republicans have a full slate of people running. They're losing about 2-1 in those offices. This is similar to last time. We don't know how much these early votes will change or how the election day votes will shift. This is a little bit larger of a margin than Republicans had expected in these districts, so it could be a harder, say, for Republicans to flip them. All right, so it's Council District 7. Try and make sure I can get this right here. Yeah. All right. Finally. There we go. All right. So this is District 6 right here. This is the Charlotte base 6 district. Right now, Tarek Bakari is losing this district by about 9% to Stephanie Hand, who is the Democrat running for the district. So this would basically Republicans need to pick up a good chunk of the votes from early election results in order to carry this district. They'll need to be performing pretty well to make up for this, but it's worth noting Republicans tend to vote more on election day, and Republicans tend to vote with larger margins on election day than they do in other parts of, specifically in early voting is one where they tend to have a pretty big difference. So let's go ahead and go back and look at some of the other districts here. This is Ed Driggs' district, the 7th district. This is the one where Democrats did not file. You notice write-ins are still getting about 13% of the vote. This is also a district that voted for Biden. But you'll notice here, this is much closer to the south part of the wedge. This is the more conservative portion of the wedge. This seat did not go to Biden by nearly as large of a margin as the other portion. And in the mayoral race, interestingly so far, Republicans actually have appeared to be ahead in some precincts this time. I don't believe Republicans won any precincts in the last mayoral race. Charlotte does not take the entirety of Mecklenburg County, including these two towns over here, which tend to vote more for Republicans, as well as North Mecklenburg County. And then for these at-large races, right now Republicans, the highest performing Republican, Kyle Lubke, is about 11,000 votes down on, or it's about 9,000 votes down on the lowest performing Democrat. That's on the higher end. I believe Tarek Bakari was expecting about 8,000 vote difference. That's a little bit higher than he had projected, but of course he's a Republican. He has kind of a vested interest in hyping up Republican candidates in the district. So if you have any questions, be sure to ask them. I'll be sure to answer them. You can join the live stream on YouTube if you want to answer questions. I'll post a link to the live stream here under the Twitter, so you can join in and ask any questions if you'd like. Otherwise, we're just going to continue going through, just kind of discussing anything about the district. I'll go into a little bit more history of the district as well. But yeah, Charlotte used to be a lot more competitive for Republicans than other portions of, than you would expect. Republicans actually only lost the 2017 mayoral race in Charlotte by about 19 points. Again, this is a city that goes to Biden much closer to that 77% margin Lyles got in 2019. So this would be a little bit of a fallback off of that. This election was previously going to be held last year. It was delayed due to COVID. They voted to delay the election into next year. So this is why it's occurring at such a kind of unusual time. There are other elections going on in North Carolina. I'm going to go ahead and look at those real quick. There's the mayor of Fayetteville. Mitch Colvin, who's a Democrat, is leading Freddie De La Cruz as expected, pretty large margin. Fayetteville's, again, another very Democratic city. Republicans actually held this mayoral office until about 2017 when they lost it in sort of that blue wave that was sort of occurring in some of those midterms. There's a mayoral election in Catawba County, close to where I am. Hank Guess, again, winning as expected there. And then in Guilford County, there's actually three candidates. There's two main candidates running in the Greensboro mayoral race. Greensboro is a very, very Democratic city. Nancy Vaughn is currently ahead by about 10 percentage points. Again, this is just the early vote. She is the current mayor of Greensboro. So she is she's faced some controversy, I think, from more left-leaning groups over the last term. And then you've got Justin Outling, who is second. And then there's some write-in votes going to additional candidates, which is kind of interesting. So that's kind of unusual to see. But again, Greensboro is a very, very Democratic city. We don't expect anything to be too exciting coming from either of these ones. The big one to focus on as well, I think Wake might have some results. You have Wake County Sheriff. That's a Democratic primary. That doesn't especially matter. Wake is a very Democratic county. It's home to, among other things, Raleigh, Cary, some other very, very Democratic regions. Yep. So we're going to go back to Mecklenburg here. We'll see additional results start to trickle in eventually, but these are the early votes. And I want to try and get an idea of what percentage of these votes have been cast. Let's go ahead. I follow a good source here is Joe Bruno. If you're want to follow North Carolina politics, Joe Bruno for WSOC 9 is a really, really good reporter. He covers a lot of local Charlotte politics and regional Charlotte politics. And he's covering also the local elections here as the results have started to come in. So yeah, basically this is an interesting result so far. I would expect the city council at large races to be closer than before, than the previous term. Republicans got about half of, basically you can vote for 4 candidates here. Republicans actually have a full slate this time. They only had 1 candidate running last time. They have 4 this time. Kyle Lubke is by far the most high profile. He got the endorsement of the Charlotte Observer, among other things. Usually endorses Democrats, but it did endorse Bakari, as well as some other local Republicans. They tend to be more favorable to local Republicans than statewide Republicans in North Carolina. He is performing by far the best. He's about a percentage point higher than the next performing Republican, David Mayoral. So he's about half of where James Mitchell is, who's one of the at-large Democrats. So the top four here, you can vote for four candidates in this race. The top four move on. So really, since he's down by about 9,000, unless Republicans get really, really good election day turnout, I would not expect that margin to flip. I would not expect the city council at-large seat to flip. But I would expect it to be closer than the last election, than in 2019. And pretty respectable, given Republicans are running a full slate of candidates this time. In particular, you look down here, most of these are getting, and you can vote for four of them. They're all getting about 15% of the vote. North Carolina has these kind of weird city council, county commission races that are like that. In the second district here, Republicans filed a candidate here. Republican candidate is losing as expected. This is a very, very Democratic portion of the district or of the city. Same thing here. This is a lot of Hispanic voters in this area, a lot of Black voters in this area. It's around the Charlotte airport, Charlotte Douglas. And then, of course, you got these two races down here. Again, I'm kind of surprised Democrats did not challenge Ed Driggs this time. This would be a race you would think they want to do, especially with a divided city council. Progressives were able to pass some measures in this council, but there's some more moderate Democrats. Electing an additional Democrat would make it more likely to pass some policies they kind of like in the state of North Carolina and in the county, in the city. But yeah, we're going to have to wait until more votes come in. I don't know exactly what the total turnout is, but Bakari is going to need some pretty good election day turnout in order to make up for this gap right here. And this was with a pretty decent election or early vote margins. Republicans made up, I think, about Republicans and unaffiliated made up a good portion of the electorate here. The problem is, of course, it's Mecklenburg County. It's very Democratic, and a lot of those voters, even though they're unaffiliated, will generally vote for Democrats in the primary. This is pretty much what you would expect from more urban area like. It's interesting Republicans are winning at least a few of the precincts down here in the South. If I go back. If you go to the last mayoral race, Republicans won no precincts in South Charlotte and in the wedge. So this is a slight improvement here. This is winning some of these precincts, but not a lot of them. This is about a 2-to-1, or not 2-to-1. This is about 73-26. So better than last time for Republicans, but not very good. Not what I would consider a strong performance here broadly. The question, of course, is what ballots come in, when they come in. Usually I think these dumps happen every 15, 30 minutes or so. So we'll probably get a good idea of when these happen within a reasonable amount of time. But just for comparison, let's go ahead and look at some of the previous city council race. All of those city council races were up in Charlotte. So District 6, again, last time Tarek Bakari won by about 17% in this wedge seat. I think he probably won nearly every precinct, in fact. And then Ed Driggs did not face any opposition, as usual, in that 7th district, which is much more conservative leaning. The absentee one-stop and the absentee by mail both also went to Tarek Bakari last time, but by smaller margins. Bakari only won the absentee one-stop by 300, and he won the mail by about 2 votes. And the provisional, he lost, but there were very few votes there. So I would say Bakari is out of it, but you would have expected a little bit of a stronger start for a candidate right here. So I'll go ahead and give it a few minutes here to kind of settle in, let some of the reporting come in. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you want. Could be about North Carolina politics, could be about anything. I've got a little bit of time here until the next vote drop comes in. But yeah, it does look like, I would say, I feel pretty comfortable saying Republicans aren't going to win any of those at-large county commission slots. That was a stretch goal for Republicans. They tried to field an actual ticket this time. Instead of just fielding one candidate in the at-large, they filled 4 of them. And one of them did get a Charlotte Observer endorsement. But yeah, we'll need to actually see the results come in. We'll need to see the election day turnout. We don't know how many people have turned out on election day, and we don't know how they voted. Usually election day in North Carolina is very Republican. It's far more Republican than early voting. Usually, in fact, in North Carolina politics, Democrats lead early returns, and then the Republicans will come back with election day results and overtake or at least make it a lot closer. That's pretty much how this works. But again, this is a Democratic city. This is a very strongly Democratic city. Charlotte is not a city Republicans have done very well in. For the last 10 years, they haven't held the mayoral office since 2007, since Pat McCrory won it in 2007. They've come close a couple of times, but just in recent years, they've not really been able to achieve success in the city of Charlotte beyond holding those few South Charlotte wedge districts that are much more favorable to Charlotte Republicans than the rest of the district, broadly speaking. So the actual city of Charlotte, for context here, went to Democrats 70. Joe Biden got 70.8% of the vote, and Donald Trump got 27.5% of the vote. So that ballot number for Republicans right there, Stephanie de Sirachka Bilbao, she's pretty close to that. Violaus is also ahead because there's not as many. It's just a two-way race. There's not any third-party candidates this time in the city of Charlotte. Worth noting, of course, down ballot Republicans did better. Tom Tillis only lost Charlotte by 40 points. And then in 2016, Donald Trump only lost Charlotte by about 38 points. It's really been that 2020 election that shifted a lot of the weight in Charlotte away from some of those ancestral Republicans in that wedge portion. Probably the closest Republicans got was the treasurer race. They lost it by 2-1 margin. Dale Folwell managed to get 34% of the vote in the city of Charlotte, which is really impressive for a Republican. Again, this is pretty unfavorable territory. And he actually won the rest of Charlotte here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up. I've got this Dave's Redistricting app map here that can kind of go into a little bit more detail on the city of Charlotte and its dynamics. Pull this up and load it up right here. So the vast majority of Mecklenburg County lives in Charlotte. That's that blue portion here. Again, you can see the margins right here. Dale Folwell by far did the best. He lost it 2-1. Folwell is broadly popular with the financial industry. He's the treasurer of North Carolina, handles the pensions, and is a little more favored by employee unions than you would expect for Republicans. So he did much better in Charlotte than Trump did, only losing it by 35 as opposed to 43, it would appear. But yeah, that's basically, we're just kind of waiting for these results to come in. We're at 4.7% of the vote counted right now, 4.77% of the vote counted right now in the city of Charlotte for this mayoral race. And I kind of show you the precincts to kind of compare here. So you'll notice this is the Democratic performance for president in Charlotte. There's very few of those South Charlotte wedge areas left. Go back to 2016. That's a more traditional wedge appearance. That's why it's called the wedge. It kind of goes from here to here, forming a wedge, an actual physical sort of looking wedge. And then here's how Folwell performed in that area. Still did worse than Richard Burr in 2016, and than most Republicans have done in recent memory. Like, for example, take 2014, Tom Tillis won very easily most of these wedge areas. If you compare that to 2020 for Tom Tillis, pretty big shift. He did better than Trump, but that's not saying a whole lot. So the actual districts they have drawn here for these city council candidates, all lean Democratic. There was concern from some Republicans the districts would be gerrymandered. That did not happen. So I'm going to go ahead and redraw these city council districts for you here, give you a better idea of what we're talking about or what I'm talking about when it comes to these areas. So basically the 7th district stretches from areas adjacent to these cities. I mentioned these more Republican-leaning cities closer to the border with other counties. All these hold about the same population. And then it's got this right here. So this portion, this is a Biden plus 12 or so district. That's the Driggs district, the one Democrats are not contesting tonight. Again, kind of a surprising decision considering their more recent dominance in this portion in the city of Charlotte in general. So this is a Biden plus 12 district, and then the other district is the 6th district. That's the Tarkari seat. That's the one that's competitive that they are contesting, and that's one that Biden won about 61% of the vote in. So this stretches from about here, to sort of these precincts right here. And there it is. So this is a district Biden won by about a 61, 62 to 36 margin. So about a 25 point lean here down ballot for Democrats. And compared to some previous results in this district, even in elections where Republicans did better, these are still closer districts than one might consider, coming from what had long been Republican strongholds. So even in 2014, Tom Tillis only won the 6th district by about a percentage point. He won the 7th district by about 14 percentage points. 2016, Trump narrowly lost it, and then you had obviously those big swings. Worth noting, Dale Folwell did carry this district by about a point, but he still lost this 6th district right here by about 8 percentage points. Again, so this is a very, very strongly Democratic seat the Republicans were trying to defend. Tark Bakari has basically said that he and Briggs are in all likelihood the last Republicans to represent Charlotte in the city council districts for quite a while. He doesn't expect it. He expects that basically after Briggs and himself are defeated, that this will be the last Republicans to have representation in Charlotte for a generation or so. Which, if you're a North Carolina Republican, that probably seems a little bit disappointing, but it's pretty much in line with what I would expect given those continual leans in South Charlotte. So let's go ahead and look through here. Yeah, the wedge, the reason it's called the wedge and the reason it votes more Republican is this is the more wealthy portion. This is South Charlotte. This is home to a lot of suburban, there's a lot of urban Republicans, downtown Republicans, but a lot of urban voters that are very wealthy and have long supported Republicans, but have shifted to Democrats in recent years. But again, we'll continue to look here. But yeah, this is a pretty strong performance typically for Democrats at the presidential level at this point, and then decreasingly strong as you get further and further down the ballot. So according to Joe Bruno, it might be another 15 to 30 minutes before Election Day results start to come in. Poll workers have to drive the results to the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. So this could be an additional 15 to 30 minutes basically before we start getting any of these results. Once they do start coming in, they'll probably come in fairly quickly. This is just one county. So it should be relatively easy and fast for them to come through. But in the meantime, ask questions if you want. We're always happy to answer questions here. And don't forget, next week we're actually having a major election coverage. We're covering the August 2nd primaries. These are big major states, Michigan, a bunch of other really substantial states that Republicans and Democrats are highly contesting. These are primaries. These are mostly swing states. These are ones that will have a pretty big impact on the 2022 elections broadly, either at the congressional level or at the federal level with the Senate, even at the state level with gubernatorial primaries. In particular, Michigan, which has had its Republican field upended by a disqualification of most of its leading nominees from the ballot due to a massive signature fraud involving from the campaigns. But yeah, once the results are driven to the Board of Elections in Mecklenburg, that's when they can start counting them. But yeah, again, like we expected, I'm still surprised that that Democrats did not challenge Ed Driggs. This is still a district that Democrats won. This is a district that Joe Biden won. This is a district that pretty much every Democrat except for Dale Folwell was able to win the district, but every other Democratic candidate pretty much won this district. So it's kind of surprising that there was not a challenge here. More closely, and then again, the mayoral race, we do expect this to get closer. We expect these results to get somewhat closer when these election day votes come in, but we don't know how many votes have been cast. We don't know how they've gone, obviously, but the big one is we don't know how many votes are out there. If Republicans win the votes by large margins, Bakari could very well win re-election. Some of those city council at-large candidates come a little bit closer. They're not going to win, I don't think, but they could come a little bit closer than before. But again, it just kind of depends. This is a Democratic city. This is a Democratic area. This is an area Democrats tend to do very well in. So it's not a surprise Democrats will be doing well here. We just don't really know how close the city council district is going to go and if it's going to go down to the wire or not. Right now, a 9-point lead, I wouldn't say that's essentially stable for Stephanie Hand, but it's harder to say what the potential is here unless we get those additional, voting numbers in from the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. And this is, again, Joe Bruno saying that as of about 7 minutes ago. So the results could be anywhere from the next 8 minutes to about 22. That'd be what I would expect when we start getting some of these results in. But yeah, let's go ahead and see if, again, I'm going to go check and see if any of these other counties have started having some more election day results come in. North Carolina tends to count their votes very, very quickly. Let's go ahead and look at this one right here. Yeah, Nancy Vaughn is doing really well in sort of the wider areas of the county, it would seem, but also in some of the more African-American portions around here. These areas right here tend to vote for, or tend to be comprised of majority African-American, whereas just an Outling is winning more of the portions inland. These are both the less democratic portions of the county or of the city and the wider areas of the city. Greensboro has a pretty clear demographic divide between majority African-American portions of the city and majority white portions of the city. And then for Fayetteville Mayor, again, this is not one Republicans are expected to win or compete in. In fact, they're losing pretty badly. Freddie De La Cruz is doing really well in these wider portions right around here. This is expected. This is the Republican portion of Cumberland County right here, or the Republican portion of Fayetteville, I should say. This is very white, very Republican, and then the rest of the county is, or the rest of the city, I should say, tends to vote for African Americans more and tends to be more African American than the Republican portions. Overall, it's a very Democratic city. But, these numbers do shift based on, early voting. They shift on election day votes, how many of those are in, what proportion of the ballot they are. So we're really not going to be sure until we see some of those results start to pour in, which should be, relatively soon, I would think. I'm going to go back and check Joe Bruno again. Again, Joe Bruno, if you want to follow him, he does a really good job with North Carolina politics in general, but is specifically based out of Charlotte and covers Charlotte politics. His profile is Joe Bruno, WSOC 9. This is one of the local news networks in Charlotte. And the good thing about North Carolina, again, is the votes are counted pretty quickly, usually once they come in. North Carolina has a really, really good voting system. Oh, good question. So, what are my thoughts on the 538 election model? I've not given a huge look at it. My general thought with models is they're useful guides. They're useful to look at, to kind of examine and to see, including the DDHQ one that just dropped. But they're just that, they're models. They're going to adjust as time goes on. I do like that the New York Times offers 538 offers. If I'm right here, and I'm going to check just to make sure. I believe 538 offers various different versions of their model. The light version, the classic version, polling. And that could be New York Times. I'm not sure. Let me go back and check just to make sure. Yep, it has the polling, it has popular vote, it has forecast. Yeah, I don't have any issue with the 538 forecast. Again, they're models, they're forecasts, they're just going off of the data. The question is which ones are more correct or not. But I don't see any issue in particular with the model. I think these are a good thing. I think the DDHQ one is a good one, and they're just going to adjust as as the results come in. In particular, the model of Republican odds seems pretty reasonable to me, going up and down slightly. But yeah, we're still at that. We're still about that 4.77% threshold here. About what I would expect. And we just don't know how additional votes are going to come in. Right now, turnout is looking about 28,000 votes cast. We just don't know how many votes have been cast on election day and how long those are going to take to get in. But yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to check Joe Bruno again just to make sure. But yeah, can you ask him questions? We got plenty of time here. Expect results to come in, before 8:30 at minimum. Probably sooner than that. No update from Bruno. So again, we're going to be just waiting here until we get some additional information from the Mecklenburg County. But I'm going to go see if Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. They may have their own tracker here. Oh, yeah, they just post them all to the SBE. Makes sense. But yeah, if you got any questions, continue to ask them. I'll be here. We're just going to be waiting until these additional results come in and we get a better idea if Republicans can hold the seat or not. Giving it a reload here. And again, this is the current state of the race. You see this little pattern of up here. These areas right up towards uptown Charlotte, which is what people from North Carolina and from Charlotte call downtown Charlotte for what anyone else would call it. Because reasons, these are some of the more wealthy areas, and these areas have tended to go more Republican than even some of the areas further south in Mecklenburg County. They tend to be still more Republican. Yep. So about 100 mail-in ballots came in today and will be counted on Friday. There's still about 2,000 mail ballots outstanding, but many of those will not come back. There's an extended period for returning mail-in ballots. So for sure, there are 100 votes here that will be counted on Friday. So if there is a close election here, this could impact things. That small amount of votes there does matter. But yeah, just for an update for some people who've joined, because I know some additional followers joining. Right now, we only have mail and early voting ballots here, or we only have early votes in. So according to Board of Elections, we have the absentee one stop and we have the absentee by mail. Both of these have been counted. There's no election day in. There's no provisionals that have been counted either. So as of that, with right now, with these early votes all in, Vi Lyles leads the Republican challenger 73 to 27 or 26. This is about the margin that Trump and Biden had in the presidential election here in Charlotte. In the 6th district, Stephanie Hand is leading Tarek Bakari by about 9 percentage points, closer to 10 percentage points here. Again, with only these early votes in, with no election day votes in. This is about a 800 vote margin here, 750 vote margin. Ed Driggs, again, uncontested by Democrats, polling 87% of the vote. And in the at-large races, which did see a Republican here, Kyle Lubke, endorsed by the Charlotte Observer, he is overperforming the rest of the Republican pack here, but he is not really within striking distance of any of these Democratic at-large commissioner candidates. That being said, we don't know how many votes, election day votes, are out. We won't know until they're counted. And we can't say for sure whether these races will narrow and whether Bakari will be able to overcome this early voting gap here. But yeah, again, continue to ask questions if you want. We'll be here for a little bit longer. Certainly, I want to get some of these election day votes in. We'll still get a better idea of how these races actually stand. Again, these Republicans are trying to hold one of their 2 city council districts in Charlotte. These districts were redrawn last time. Tarek Bakari won about 17% of the vote. That was his margin of victory. This is a district Biden won anywhere, depending on how you calculate district, from 59 to 61% of the vote, over a 20-point margin, essentially. And then the 7th district here, which is the Ed Driggs seat, was a Biden plus 14 or 15 seat, depending on how you calculate it. So again, that's a district that is Democratic favored, but is not one that Republicans currently hold. Oh, good question here, Sumit. So do I think the Charlotte wedge will reappear in the 2022 statewide elections? It depends. So unlike Tom Tillis, Ted Budd is not from Charlotte. Ted Budd is from the Greensboro area, the Triad, center of North Carolina. Tom Tillis and Richard Burr had some really strong strengths in those areas. Budd may have actually had some connections with maybe some banking connections from his time representing portions of Winston-Salem, for example. But it really depends more on the urban snapback, on whether or not those voters are going to turn out and vote for Democrats. I would not expect a blood red wedge unless Ted Budd is winning by 7 or 8 percentage points. Even then, a lot of that vote is going to come from rural and suburban counties. It's not going to come as much from Charlotte. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a scenario where, say, we get Fulwell level numbers. So where, you're losing Charlotte 2-1, you're even in the rest of Mecklenburg County, so in North Meck and those couple of cities, Mid Hill and whatnot, in the southeastern portion of Charlotte. I would not be surprised if that is the case more broadly. If Republicans get a little bit of a clawback, it's not enough to make the whole wedge red again. I don't think we're getting those. I really don't think we're getting those 2014 numbers back, though, where, get to kind of go back to the districts here, kind of that map I had made. I don't think we're going to be going back to a 2014 situation where Tillis is doing as well as he did in those urban areas. I don't think Budd is capable of getting those numbers in Charlotte proper. So let's go ahead and calculate that here just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about overall. Again, this is Charlotte right here. And this is the rest of the county. So there are those right there. The rest of Charlotte tends to be, or the rest of Mecklenburg County tends to be more Republican than Charlotte itself. But South Charlotte is traditionally been more along the lines of what you'd expect from, like those portions of the rest of Charlotte. So if you look at the actual voting here, this is in 2014, I think. Yep, let's set this 2014. This is the blood red wedge. This is the original. This is what Tom Tillis would perform. So Tom Tillis only lost core Charlotte by about 31 percentage points. And he won the rest of Mecklenburg County by about 8 percentage points. If we just take that wedge area of Charlotte, keep in mind, this is at the time where Tom Tillis was representing portions of Mecklenburg County. So let's go ahead and just take this wedge right here. Just drag this right here. Those numbers from the wedge are closer to Trump or Tillis plus 15. And that's actually pretty tame by historical standards in the wedge. These areas have been a lot more Republican than Republican plus 15. Do I think that's coming back? No, I don't think Republicans are going to be getting those margins again. That being said, if you look at the presidential election in 2020, Biden won this wedge portion by about 13 percentage points. Dale Folwell actually won this wedge portion by 2. So I think it's very possible that Ted Budd could win this portion of Mecklenburg County by about 2 percentage points. I don't think that's unlikely. It's probably closer, though, that he loses it by 5 or 6. Again, depending on this depends on the actual margins in Mecklenburg County and statewide. We really don't know how well Ted Budd is going to do compared to other people in Charlotte and other people statewide because we haven't actually seen him run in Charlotte before. He's only run around Greensboro, which is a different portion of the state entirely. But yeah, that's roughly the gist of it. I think it's very possible that's the case. Obviously, Vi Lyles says she's feeling good about the results that have come in. I would be feeling very good too if I was winning with 73% of the vote. This race has never been in doubt, the mayoral race. The just question is margin. She won with 77% of the vote in 2019. That was not going to happen again. Like I mentioned, there's Republicans won no precincts in Charlotte in the 2019 election. Right now, they're going to hold these with the election day voting. They've already won several. It looks like about a half dozen here, anywhere from half dozen to a dozen. So, that's not going to be the case this time for Democrats. But yeah, have there been additional votes added? Yep, there we go. There's some additional votes. And the voting has narrowed so far. Tarek Bakari is currently leading the election day vote by about 140 votes. We don't know how much of this vote is in total, basically, but this is with an additional 0.5% of the vote put in. So additional 0.5% of the vote in, Tarek Bakari gets us back within 7 percentage points, it seems, 7 or 8 percentage points. That's a good election day performance, actually. If we were going to look at this right here, if this result basically holds this election day margin, oops, I remember the math in my head here. That's 628. That's Bakari winning about 72% of the election day vote. So 72% of the election day vote, or 62%, that's really good. That's the sort of margins he would need to have to hold on to the seat. But, yep. Again, we don't know how much of the election day vote, and that's not going to be all the election day vote. But that's some of the election day vote. That's taken this from about 4.77% turnout to 5.01%. But yeah, you can kind of draw a straight line as to where the areas he's doing really well here in are. Ooh, even more. More election day vote is in. It's down to about a 5-point race now. But again, we don't know how much of this vote is in. And interestingly, Lubicki is only trailing by about 6 percentage points now. And let's look at the election day mayoral results here. Okay, we've already got, yeah, this precinct 32 here, close to uptown Charlotte. That's the sort of traditional Republican stronghold you'd expect. Vilaus is leading the election day about 2-1, but that's much closer than her early vote margins. Yeah, depending on the amount of election day vote left, Bakari has a really good shot here at holding this district again. I'm going to go back and look at 2019 and compare and see what the election day vote was in Mecklenburg County that year, about what total amount of votes were in. So, yeah, they were closer to 8,000. Well, yeah, the totals were different here, obviously. This is much different. There's many more absentee votes now. But those margins are, again, pretty strong, and they seem pretty similar to the sort of performance that Bakari got last time. So let's kind of look here. Yep, he's actually up in the election day vote from last time. So this is a pretty good performance so far. But yeah, right now I would say this: if there's even remotely similar amounts of election day votes to last time, Bakara should be able to hold on here. But yeah, again, this is the Charlotte wedge sort of reappearing. A little bit of it, at least. Charlotte definitely has a stronger preference for Democrats up ballot than down ballot. Even as recently as 2017, Republicans were able to field a marginally competitive mayoral race. Yeah, this is a good remark from Yesh here. Bakari winning easily. They counted 5 precincts. He's got 50 more, and he's going to outright win election day in basically every precinct. So this is probably not even going to be particularly close. Assuming there's a lot more votes in. Again, I want to see how close these at-large races are. Lubke is doing pretty well, but he's not within the striking distance you would need to actually win the district. You'll notice he's still down by about 6.5%. This is respectable. This is really respectable for a Republican in Charlotte. This is a very Democratic city. This is at large. So this is a very strong performance for Lubke. But I'm not sure that's going to be enough it's probably not enough to get him across the line. But again, very respectable performance for Kyle Lubke, assuming things don't change. We have a lot more precincts to go here, especially in those sort of South Charlotte areas. Oh yeah, go right ahead. Share that with me, Yesh, and I'll use that on stream. Yeah, Lubke is really interesting, and I want to mention this because again, he's probably not going to win here. But Lubke is a very interesting political figure. He's a gay Republican who is focusing he worked pretty heavily on along with Tarek Bakari and the other Ed Driggs and the Mecklenburg Republican Party on crafting a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Charlotte. This ordinance was actually broader than the initial one proposed by Democrats, including things like a hair discrimination, natural hair, which is an issue for a lot of people who have more curly or natural hairstyles or haircuts that are harder to handle like someone like me can. I have thick, pretty thin hair. I don't have curly hair. Lubke also ran pretty heavily on transit, and in particular on business development and housing. So performing pretty well here overall. Losing by 2 or 3 would not be what you would want to see if you're Kyle Lubke, if you're a Mecklenburg Republican. But the fact he's performing about 1.5 better than the other Republicans shows he is getting a little bit of a bump. He did get the endorsement from the Charlotte Observer. The Charlotte Observer endorsed 3 of the Democrats on the ticket, but they endorsed Lubke as the 4th slot. Again, so that's pretty. Yep, here we go. So this is, this right here. All right, let's go ahead and pull up this document that Yesh is working on here. All right, so this is kind of focusing on the election day results here. And all these precincts, interesting. And I guess this is comparing them to... Yep, so this is all the precincts. Mecklenburg has a number of precincts here. They got fractional precincts. They got some other stuff that's a little bit funky. Yep, so column N shows how Lubke is doing compared to Trump. If column M says change, that means we have election day votes for the precinct. Unchanged just means the early mail-in votes. So let's look at the changed precincts. Oops. Yeah, so he's performing about 6 points ahead in some of these, and some of them he's running behind a little bit. But yeah, that's a pretty decent overperformance in a lot of these areas. So good stuff right there. Get 6% of the vote in, and Lubke is now down only by about 6 percentage points. Again, very respectable performance so far. And Stephanie Hands now only leads by about 100 votes. So this is about the end. This is about the end for Stephanie Hand. It does look like Tarek Bakari will have the support needed to win re-election here. Just based on these precincts, I think I'm going to go ahead and unofficially make a call here. I do think Bakari is the one who has the best chance here. The election day votes are coming in. They're going heavily for Bakari. We kind of look at the percentage votes totals here. 232. Oops. Yeah, he's winning about 60%, 59-60% of the election day votes. That's going to be more than enough to put him over the top. So I think Tarek Bakari is definitely set to win re-election here. This is always depending on how many of these election day votes are outstanding and what the percentage of them were. But let's go back to the tracker here. So 21. So the margin Trump lost by, column M. Yep, makes sense. I'm just going to wait for Tariq or Tark to officially take the lead here. But yeah, I think But yeah, if Bakari, and we do expect Tark Bakari to pull this one out. I'm waiting for him to pull ahead before I make an official projection here, or unofficial projection. This isn't Decision Desk predicting. This is me personally. Tark Bakari should be in a pretty good position here. This would again keep Republicans with 2 seats on the city council. Again, Ed Driggs easily winning his. Write-in's only getting around 12% of the vote. And then in some of these other city council races, Republicans are not performing terribly, but they actually did field a ticket, so they're actually getting votes in person this time. The closest Republican in the at-large races, Kyle Lubke, is losing about 6% of the vote right now, just a little bit under 6%. There's a lot of election day votes back in to come, but the margin that he's pulling, you'll see, even with the election day votes, he's still getting less than the lowest performing Democrat. So it'd be pretty unlikely if he were able to win this thing. But he could pull closer, certainly get it within a much closer margin than what it is right now, and a much closer margin than the Republican in 2019 had. He lost the at-large by about 10 percentage points. All the Democrats clobbered around 22%, and then Republican got around 11% of the vote. But yeah, this should be a very good night for Tariq Tark Bakari, who is a very outspoken Republican on the Charlotte City Council. 6.2% of the vote counted so far. But yeah, these votes are coming in batches. Again, there's only 12 of 38 precincts that have been put out in the district, in the 6th district. And there's only two precincts have been counted in the 7th city council district, which is, again, the Ed Driggs seat, the very Republican, the more Republican of the 2 city council districts. The question here will also be whether Live Viles is dropped below 70%. Right now, she's at 71.5%. This would be a little bit of an underperformance from Biden, but again, this is an ancestrally Republican city to some extent, a city that had a Republican mayor as recently as 2007, and with the exception of 2019, 2017, and 2011, has usually had fairly competitive gubernatorial races. But I feel fairly comfortable saying that Tariq Bakari is almost certainly going to win re-election into that 6th city council district. Oh, gotcha. Precinct size and whether they have E-Day votes in. Entirely makes sense. Yeah, if a lot of the ones that are already in, Yesh is again saying a lot of the ones that are already in are smaller precincts, so there is room for Republican candidates to grow here, particularly Bakari, but probably Lebke as well. But yeah, anyone, if you have questions, still ask them. We're going to keep going for a little bit longer. I want to see if some additional results come in. I get a good idea of what's going on here. But it appears Bakari is going to win. That's probably going to be the end of the stream once we get to that point. Results will continue coming in throughout the night. I'll continue keeping you posted on Twitter at that point as to whether or not Lebke is able to have enough support to make this close. He very well could. There's a lot of precincts left outstanding. But yeah, a lot of those precincts that are currently in are smaller precincts with smaller numbers of votes. Most of the larger precincts are not in yet. So again, this could be a factor that could help or hurt. A lot of those precincts are probably ones that Republicans could do better in, or they could be ones that are closer to like the inner city, core city parts of Charlotte. Well, there's a lot of reasons. One, Republicans did better down ballot than they did statewide with Trump. Another is the race was made about gun control, which is not traditionally a winning issue for Democrats in North Carolina. There was a lot of Bloomberg money that came in. Again, the polls could change, situation could change, but it's not a typical assault weapon bans are typically not a mover of voters in North Carolina. And it was made a one-on-one issue on gun control. Republicans are a lot more excited. Robinson also did a lot better with voters in all over the state. But Trump did better, and basically Robinson did better with ancestrally Republican voters in the cities. Trump did better with newer Republican trending voters in rural portions of the state. I have a map here showing that race here. I got to find the lieutenant governor swing here. See if I can find it. If I can't find it, I probably put it on Twitter, in which case I can find it there. Yeah, here we go. Here's a good one. So here's a good example of what I'm talking about here. Is the performance of Mark Robinson by House District. So you'll notice Mark Robinson did better in some of these North Mech, some of these South Mech districts. Let's pull these exact same ones up with Trump. Side by side. You notice Trump actually lost that Mecklenburg North Mech seat. He did worse in the two wedge districts. He did, again, Robinson actually won this district in southern Mecklenburg County. Trump lost it. And then in places like Greensboro, other areas, Robinson just outperformed us. He outperformed in the rural areas. That being said, Trump did outperform Robinson in a lot of, like I said, those trending Republican areas. So we're talking the Robeson County, the Northeast, areas that have newer voters that don't typically vote Republican in general. That's where Robertson performed more poorly compared to Trump. But yeah, it was really just Robinson's, also his controversies were not that well known. If they'd been publicized, it might have had more of an impact. But they were not really well publicized looking into things. Yep, 18 of 38. Hand is up by about 1% of the vote there. This is with about 7% of the vote in. Again, Vi Lyles is drifting a little bit closer to finish at 71 or 70% vote mark. Got to deal with this real quick. It appears I have run out of application memory. Sorry about that. My computer's running a little bit slow here. I'm running on my MacBook. It's not agreeing with Firefox for whatever reason right now. But we'll get back up and running here in a second. Oops. Oh, sorry about that, folks. I had some computer issues here. But yeah, that's not really a shift from what we were last looking at. Again, apologies with the computer issues. My computer ran out of memory, as it turns out, and that made it run too slowly to do anything. So sorry if the last couple of minutes were a bit choppy or anything. But I'm going to go ahead and shift it over to screen number 2 here. Again, get back to looking at this mayoral election here. The mayoral election and the city council race are about 7%. Stephanie Hand up by about 1% over to Tarek Bakari. And then we have the votes there for the other candidates as well. I'm going to go ahead and wait a little bit longer for some more results to come in. But again, I would say Tarek Bakari has the best chance of winning District 6. 18 of 38 precincts are in. He is winning the election day voting here by a pretty wide margin, and those are the votes that are left to be counted. If we just add these up here. He's winning about 56% of those election day votes now, compared to similar margin losing in the absentee one-stop voting. So yeah, I do expect Tarek Bakari to pull it out here, but it's still very, very close right now. Could go either way, but Bakari has the best shot. Just the amount of math needed remaining for would just be unlikely, I would think, for it to go any other way other than Bakari. But yeah, overall, if you're a Mecklenburg County, additional votes in. There we go. No, that's the citywide vote. So we're now at 8% reporting. It seems like the latest amount came from areas that were not part of that 6th district. Looks like some of them came from the 7th district, which is the more Republican portion. Again, that's what it's reporting, at least 70.91% for Vi Lyles. And Tark Bakari has taken the lead. Now, it looks like Election Day votes will pass absentee one-stop voting, I'm pretty sure. So with that, that's almost certainly going to be the results. I'll continue updating you throughout the night on Tark Bakari's performance, but basically, I am very confident that he's going to hold on to this thing. Most of the precincts that are left are ones that he has won, or that Trump won, and he is just simply winning the Election Day voting by a large enough margin to do this. Unless, again, those 100 or so mail-in ballots all happen to predominantly come from the 6th, and this is a really close election. This will be probably one that's called tonight. Moreover, Vi Lyles is now under 70% of the vote here. She's only winning 69.9% of the vote. And Kyle Lebke's nearing 10% of the vote now. So that's pretty impressive. He is outperforming the rest of the Republican ticket here by about 1.2%. So, yeah, overall, if you're a Mecklenburg Republican, pretty good night for you to keep your second city council member in all likelihood, and a respectable showing in those city council races. Obviously, running as a Republican in Charlotte is a challenge. Getting as close as Lebke is going to get is probably a pretty admirable feat for a Republican, even if he's only a couple percentage points higher than some of the other challengers. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. This has been a pretty good stream. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, for our coverage of the August 2nd primaries. A lot of interesting races there. We'll also be back with you next week, or this week, Elections Weekly on Friday. We'll be going over a lot more, probably talk a little bit about this. We'll talk about some other races, some polling. But yeah, thank you all. Thank you guys all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to Elections Daily. Elections Daily, wherever you're watching it from, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever. Elections-daily.com. That's our website. We post articles, news, ratings, coverage. We just had a new ratings drop on Monday, which are pretty exciting. We had some big changes there. We moved New Mexico to toss-up. We moved Oregon to toss-up. We moved Georgia to likely Republican. We moved Indiana 1 and Indiana 1 to a toss-up, among other races. Give that article a look. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Really do appreciate your support. Hope you have a great night, and thank you for tuning in.